Bom dia a todos, bom dia a todas. É um grande prazer estar com vocês aqui. A gente abriu a sala alguns minutinhos antes para que todos possam se acomodar, vamos dizer assim, em suas casas, ajeitar o microfone, ajeitar fones e tudo mais. Estou vendo aqui rapidamente o número de participantes na sala crescendo, vertiginosamente. Vamos começar pontualmente ao meio-dia. Nosso querido fundador do Schumacher College, Satish Kumar, vai estar presente com a gente hoje, fazendo uma fala especial. A gente vai conversar também com a diretora da Escola Schumacher Brasil. Então, já fizemos mais de 20 eventos ao longo desse ano, culminando com esse encontro agora com o nosso querido fundador. Meio-dia. Então, está na hora da gente começar. Vamos lá, então. Boas-vindas, boa tarde a todos e a todas. Muito obrigado pela presença de vocês aqui. Mais um evento online da Escola Schumacher Brasil. Muito obrigado pelo suporte que vocês estão nos dando. É muito importante nesse momento. É um momento totalmente especial para a humanidade e a gente tem certeza que o Schumacher College e a Escola Schumacher Brasil podem trazer insights importantes para a gente avançar e navegar esses mares difíceis. Eu vou chamar e dividir a palavra com a nossa querida Bia, ela é diretora da escola. Bia, fale um pouquinho mais para a gente, por favor, da Escola Schumacher Brasil, das atividades que vocês vêm desenvolvendo.
Oi, muito obrigada, Cazé. Obrigada por estar aqui. Satish, thank you so much. Rosane and a lot of people that are in the background that we cannot see. I'm going to speak a little bit of Portuguese and then we'll come back to you, Satish, but just to let you know.
Ok, thank you.
Muito bem, eu estou vendo que tem muita gente entrando ainda, então vamos no nosso ritmo. Sobre a escola. A Escola Schumacher Brasil, ela começou aqui em 2014. Foi parte de um movimento que foi iniciado pela Juliana Schneider e pela Mari Turato, junto com uma série de pessoas, uma rede de brasileiros e de alguns professores do college que sempre foram muito parceiros dos movimentos por aqui. E em 2014, esse grupo de pessoas começou a explorar o que seria possível ganhar vida no Brasil, inspirado pelo ethos do Schumacher College. E aí, desde 2014, a escola oferece uma série de experiências, vivências, cursos e programas de educação transformadora para uma vida sustentável. Muito inspiradas aí pelo nome que compõe o nome da nossa organização e o college, né? O I.F. Schumacher, que é esse economista alemão, que escreveu um livro que foi o livro que começou o movimento da nova economia, que se chama Small is Beautiful, que tem uma tradução literal do pequeno é belo, né? Eu sei que a tradução em português não é essa. E é isso, então desde 2014 a gente está aqui. Acho que a gente estava conversando até antes de começar, né, Cazé, sobre o que nos traz aqui hoje, eu acho, com o Satish. E a gente estava relembrando.
Sim,
assim,
total. Sobre as reflexões que foram feitas, né? Havia todo um evento que ia ser realizado agora no Amazonas, com o Satish lá presente, com uma série de outras pessoas relacionadas com o trabalho que vem sendo feito muito bonito lá, entre eles o Caetano da Saúde e Alegria. Isso não foi possível por conta do Covid. Eu queria que a Bia contasse um pouco mais desse commission, né? Então, assim, Bia conversou um pouco com o Satish. Satish, a gente está num momento que é muito importante ter uma fala de você. Estamos passando por uma crise jamais vista na humanidade, no Brasil, uma situação bem difícil. Como é que foi esse papo com ele?
Então, a gente tinha, 3 semanas antes da gente entrar em quarentena no Brasil, a gente estava prestes a receber o Satish, como você falou, que iria para a Amazônia para uma série de encontros lá e em São Paulo também. E a gente continuou, quando a gente suspendeu tudo, a gente continuou conversando. O Satish viria para o Brasil para falar dessa pauta de Amazônia, da proteção dos povos da Amazônia e da floresta. E o que aconteceu foi que acho que a crise tomou proporções que nenhum de nós estava esperando e as nossas conversas com o Satish começaram a ser muito em função desse olhar mais abrangente, talvez, para a crise, né, que se tornou, que já existia, né, com a crise climática e com tantas outras, mas que com a pandemia ela se agravou ainda mais. Então, o que a gente conversou é que faria muito sentido, a gente continuou com essa vontade de ter o Satish com a gente, e começou a fazer muito mais sentido que a gente ampliasse um pouco essa reflexão e olhasse para todas essas crises. Então, a gente tem trocado bastante com o Satish, que está agora no interior da Inglaterra, contando um pouco para ele do contexto de Brasil, né? E de todas as crises que estão permeando o nosso dia a dia aqui. E foi aí que surgiu essa temática para o encontro de hoje, né? Que ele vai falar sobre esses três temas, digamos. O protestar, proteger e colaborar, muito a visão dele em relação ao que precisa ser feito nesse momento, né? Não só como reflexão, mas como ação também. Então, acho que é isso.
Sim, o Satish, para quem já conhece, teve a oportunidade de ler alguns dos livros dele, ele é muito afeito às tríades, né? Então, recentemente ele tinha lançado um livro chamado Soul, Soil e Society, propondo essa tríade da alma, do solo e da sociedade, e a partir dessa conversa que ele teve com a Bia, ele veio com mais uma tríade, que é o protestar, proteger e colaborar, que é sobre esse assunto que ele vai falar agora. Sem mais delongas, né? Vamos partir para o nosso querido fala do nosso grande Satish, mas antes vou dar algumas recomendações aqui. Bom, não precisa se preocupar com o microfone e com o vídeo, porque essas funções estarão desligadas para a audiência. A maneira que nós podemos nos comunicar, nós teremos 45 minutos de uma fala do Satish e logo depois teremos meia hora de perguntas. Essas perguntas vão ser feitas pela audiência através se você olhar no rodapé da janela do Zoom, tem ali dois balãozinhos, QIA, né, Questions and Answers, vai ser a partir dali que a gente vai receber as perguntas de vocês. Então, por favor, quem quiser mandar perguntas para o Satish, algum tipo de reflexão, algum comentário, é só mandar pelo Question and Answers, a gente vai fazer uma seleção e ao final a gente vai ler algumas dessas perguntas para que o Satish responda. Teremos também algumas perguntas enviadas por vídeo de algumas pessoas que nós convidamos. Deixa eu ver se... Bom, sobre tradução, a gente... Oi.
Não, fala, desculpa.
Vamos lá, Bia, fala.
Depois eu queria
falar.
só antes dizer que eu estou recebendo, eu acabei de olhar aqui, tem bastante gente que não está conseguindo entrar. A gente mandou um e-mail, o Simpla deveria, um e-mail automático do Simpla com as informações para conexão. Se vocês tiverem, as pessoas que estão assistindo, se vocês tiverem, conheçam pessoas que estão tentando entrar, é só dividir esse link e as pessoas conseguem entrar com esse link, tá? Eu vou aproveitar enquanto isso só e vou mandar para pessoas que estão pedindo aqui, porque acho que o e-mail pode ter chegado no spam ou alguma coisa assim.
Legal, se você puder, talvez se você puder compartilhar esse link através do chat também. Acho que alguém já fez,
aí,
né?
Boa.
Show de bola. Assim a gente vai recebendo, né? Porque a gente ainda tem bastante gente para entrar, mas enfim, em função da hora e de todos os combinados, vamos honrar o compromisso e seguir falando, e isso também mais tarde vai estar disponível pelo YouTube, a gente vai subir isso tudo direitinho. Bom, para quem quiser acompanhar a fala do Satish com tradução simultânea em português, vocês do lado dos balõezinhos ali que eu falei, vocês podem enviar perguntas, o QIA tem o interpretation, né? A interpretação, é só clicar, é um globo, você clica ali, se você quiser off, deixa em off, e aí você vai ouvir o áudio do Satish, e se você quiser em português, é só colocar em português, e a partir do momento que eu falar em inglês, você faz essa mudança. É importante só fazer essa mudança quando eu começar a falar em inglês, porque senão você vai ouvir o áudio errado, basicamente. Bom, outra coisa também, para as pessoas que preferirem acompanhar com a tradução de Libras, nós temos nossa voluntária, Rosane Lucas, muito obrigado pela sua presença aqui, Rosane. Então é só ir no topo da janela do Zoom, tem ali, você pode colocar a view, o speaker view, né, o view de quem estiver falando, ou você pode botar no gallery view. Você põe no gallery view e você procura a Rosane Lucas, você pode dar um pin no vídeo dela e ela vai estar disponível, você vai poder acompanhar também essa fala em Libras. Bom, Bia, temos mais alguma coisa ou já avançamos para a chamada do nosso querido Satish?
Acho que podemos começar.
Podemos começar então. Então eu vou falar primeiro em português e aí quando eu acabar esse build-up do Satish, vamos dizer assim, eu vou fazer a chamada dele em inglês para ele, evidentemente, saber o momento dele entrar. Vamos lá então. Bom, que falar, né? É um grande prazer. Vamos receber ele aqui. Satish é um homem apaixonado, com certeza, fala com fogo nos olhos, é um brilho, é uma aura que a gente fica bastante inspirado. É um homem que se tornou monge jainista aos 8 anos de idade. Depois ele se tornou discípulo do mestre Vinoba. Ele andou boa parte da Índia ajudando o mestre Vinoba na campanha de... andou mesmo, caminhou, né, pela Índia, ajudando na campanha de doação de terras para que mais pessoas pudessem plantar, tivessem seu cultivo também. Ele fez uma caminhada excepcional nos anos 70 contra as armas nucleares. Ele andou do túmulo do Gandhi até o túmulo do Kennedy nos Estados Unidos. É claro que o Oceano Atlântico ele atravessou de barco, evidentemente, mas foram 14 mil quilômetros, visitando Paris, Nova York, Londres e também Washington, justamente para protestar contra as armas nucleares. É um dos fundadores do Schumacher College. Foi o homem que, quando ninguém acreditava em James Lovelock, que desenvolveu a teoria Gaia, que a Terra é um ser vivo, foi ele que deu a primeira cátedra para o nosso querido James Lovelock no Schumacher College. Então, é um grande prazer, é um momento mais do que especial. A gente vai passar a bola para o Satish. Agora, vocês podem ir lá, clicar no negócio do Interpretation e eu vou começar a falar em inglês. Vamos lá. Well, I'm very glad now I'm going to introduce Satish Kumar. He's a passionate man in love of the world, full of hope and energy, a Jain monk at the age of 8 years old, a pilgrim at 18 around India with Master Vinoba, a pilgrim around the world, walking 8,000 miles from Gandhi's grave to JFK's grave to protest against nuclear weapons. He's also co-founder of Schumacher College, small school, and editor-in-chief of Resurgence, the flagship of the Prince of the Eco movement. It's a great pleasure. Please welcome with lots of hands and good vibes, Satish Kumar.
Okay, thank you, thank you. It is my great pleasure to be connected with Brazil. I was hoping and planning to come to Brazil earlier this year, but because of this very unusual crisis that the world is facing, the COVID-19 crisis, that I had to postpone my visit to Brazil. So now I'm only able to meet so many of you over the Zoom and over the online. But it is a great pleasure. And I'm so delighted that so many of you are interested to hear me and welcome me to speak to you. Escola Schumacher in Brazil is a wonderful initiative. And following the example of Schumacher College in England, now you have, many of our alumni have started Escola Schumacher in Brazil. This is a great news. And for the last, maybe, I don't know how many years you have been already going, but more than 5 years, 6 years, you have been going, and you are doing wonderful program of education and a program of learning and teaching. This is a wonderful initiative, and I want to support you, and I hope that many, many people in Brazil will support Escola Schumacher for building a new movement of sustainability, of resilience, of regenerative economy, of a good future for humanity and for the planet Earth. This afternoon, and here in England, it's afternoon, and maybe in Brazil a bit earlier, I'm going to talk about the global environmental movement. And the Brazilian movement is a part of a global environmental movement. And the global environmental movement is very holistic. And I say holistic because environment is not only the natural environment, but it is also the social environment. And not only natural environment and social environment, but also spiritual environment. So I want to talk about this natural environment, which includes our rainforests and our oceans and our rivers and lakes and the soil and the land and the animals and the birds and the wildlife. All that biodiversity is a part of the natural environment. Then I want to also mention that social environment, where we have a much more just and a much more solidarity and much more justice for people. And so social solidarity and social justice is part of this global movement, a global change movement that we are part of. But this is not stopping there. I also want to include spiritual environment, because we need to change of heart. We need a new philosophy, and we need a new kind of vision, new values, new attitudes, a new consciousness to look at the world and how we see the world and what is our attitude to the world. And these are the spiritual values. So I want to include the implicit values, the non-physical, metaphysical, and non-material values of compassion, of generosity, of love, of relationship with each other. So my vision is very holistic. I want to include this global environmental movement being part of social, spiritual, and ecological movement. And in order to build this movement, which is a global movement already, and millions of people are acting for change all over the world, in Europe, in America, in South America, in Africa, in China, in everywhere, there are millions of people engaged in this social, ecological, and spiritual transformation. So this is a great movement already. But this movement already has, but I want to highlight, is based on three-legged stool. I call it three-legged stool. The first one is that we, the activists, the environmental, ecological activists, engage in highlighting what is wrong in our social systems and our political systems and our economic systems. And we not only highlight intellectually, but we protest against the exploitation of nature, destruction of the environment, pollution, waste, plastic in the oceans, poisoning the soil, cutting down the rainforest in Brazil and many other countries. We stand up against this injustice. We stand up against this destruction of the natural environment. So protesting against the destruction of the natural world, but also protesting against the social injustice. And for example, in order to protest against the destruction of the environment and this enormous carbon dioxide emission in the atmosphere, which is causing global warming and climate change and causing havoc on the planet Earth, and already forest fires and the very hot summers, even in Siberia. You will be surprised that in Siberia there's a forest fire and there's a 38 degrees of heat at this moment. We've never heard of. So we are protesting against this climate change. And people like Greta Thunberg and millions of young people around the world, young boys and girls in their schools, they are striking on Fridays and protesting against the climate change. And also in England and in Europe, many other countries, Extinction Rebellion. They are protesting against the activities of carbon emission and activities which lead to our climate change and global warming and global crisis, global catastrophe of climate change. So Extinction Rebellion and the strikes, school striking on Friday for the Future, these are the two great examples of recent times when we have used the movement, the protest, to highlight the injustice to the environment, but also the movement of protest and demonstrations around the world in the wake of George Floyd's death and killing by the police in Minneapolis, the Black Lives Matter. This movement around the world is highlighting the injustice in the name of discrimination, in the name of race, in the name of religion, in the name of nationality, in the name of caste, class, any kind of disguise. We are creating this discrimination and division among humanity. So this movement of Black Lives Matter is not only Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter. But at the moment, the subjugated, oppressed, poor people and Black people and indigenous people, particularly in the North America, indigenous people, the North American Indians. And I think the same thing in Brazil, in Brazilian indigenous cultures, in Amazon and in the Amazon and in many other parts of Brazil. They are being treated as if they are savage, they are backward, they are undeveloped. And therefore we want to impose this kind of civilization, this kind of urbanization, industrialization, monoculture of the mind. And we are destroying and killing the culture, the indigenous culture is being destroyed. And so protesting against such injustice is one of the most important part of the environmental movement. And this is non-violent, peaceful. And we have seen in the past that non-violent and peaceful movement of protest can include many hundreds, if not millions of people to participate. And there are two great examples of the non-violent protest movement in our time. One was Mahatma Gandhi in my country, India, where he non-violently, peacefully, passive resistance created a mass movement of people, and India was made independent through non-violent, peaceful methodology. And in the same way, in the United States, the movement for racial equality started with Martin Luther King. And the Martin Luther King was a great exponent and a great prophet of non-violent resistance and non-violent protest. So those two examples give us a way how we move forward in our environmental movement, and we remain peaceful, non-violent, and yet resistance. And we stand up without fear, without any kind of holding back. We go and we give our lives, and we accept any suffering due to our protest. So protesting against the injustice to humans and environmental injustice, meaning destruction of biodiversity, destruction of rainforest, destruction and pollution and waste. We stand up against all these negative forces. So this is the first important part of the global environmental movement. The second part, we say that only protest is not enough. You can be negative. You can say, no, no, no. We don't want this. We don't want that. We don't want capitalism. We don't want industrialism. We don't want materialism. We don't want consumerism. We don't want destruction of rainforest. All this is good, necessary, desirable, but not enough. We also need to protect what is good already. So, for example, the destruction of the rainforest. We have to also create organizations and consciousness and awareness among people that we protect our rainforest. And then we protect our indigenous cultures who live in these forests. People who are living in these forests have a millions of years of good values. Indigenous people can teach us how to live sustainably. The Aboriginal people in Australia, 40,000 years they have lived there without damaging the earth. So we have to protect the rainforest, and we have to protect the culture which is thriving and surviving in the rainforest, indigenous cultures. But also, there are many small farmers around the world. 60 to 70% of food in the world is produced by small, organic, family farms around the world. We have to protect them. We have to say that these people who come with big ideas and say that small scale, family farms, organic farms, traditional farming methods are uneconomical. We cannot afford them. We have to make bigger and bigger industrial farming and factory farming where thousands of cows and thousands of pigs and 20, 30, 50,000 of chickens in one factory. That kind of cruel farming, we have to protest, but at the same time, we have to protect the small farms. In the same way, there are many, many good small industry, handicrafts, cottage industry. People are protecting their livelihood on a small scale. And our environmental movement have to be part of this, protecting the existing good, traditional, tried and tested cultures, values, economies, local economy, decentralized, human scale. These are the economies which are around the world, and they have been there for thousands of years. But in the name of industrialization, in the name of materialism, in the name of progress, in the name of development, we are destroying these traditional, tried and tested farming methods, small industry, small business, small communities, small nations. We are there to protect them. So the environmental movement has to be equally active and equally emphasizing the importance of protecting the existing sustainable, regenerative, resilient communities and cultures and values. So this is the second part. First, we protest against what is wrong. And second, we protect what is good already in our history, in our tradition, in our culture, in the world. But even that is not enough. We need to do both. But we need to do a third thing. We need to collaborate and build alternatives. At the moment, our environmental movement is a bit fragmented. At the moment, many small groups are doing their own little things, protesting or building or protecting and doing good constructive work. But I would like to see more collaboration between many groups around the world working for the environmental and social and spiritual values. So collaboration. So we have to build alternatives. We have to show how permaculture projects can work successfully, how agroecology can be implemented successfully, how a local economy, decentralized, human scale can work properly, how participatory democracy can work together properly, how mutual aid can work together, how cooperation and collaboration, small cooperatives can have small businesses, cooperative businesses, and cooperative communities, and cooperative farming, and cooperative shops. Many ways of cooperation we can do together. So collaboration and cooperation, and through that we build alternatives. So we show the world that an alternative world is possible. We don't have to just go for this mass society and a mass big scale, gigantic scale industrialization and globalization. The globalization is one cause of this coronavirus that we are suffering in the world today. If there was no globalization, the globalization of economy is also creating globalization of coronavirus and a COVID-19. And therefore, we have to shift away from this globalization of economy and mass tourism. The people go just for a weekend from London to New York, or from New York to Sao Paulo, or from Sao Paulo to Beijing, just for a weekend, or just for a day, for a business conference. Why we are traveling in such a way? This is carbon emission, and this is globalization. And so we would like to see this kind of local economy. And if you are going somewhere, like if I want to come to Brazil, I should come for 1 week or 2 weeks to learn about Brazil, to learn about indigenous cultures, to learn about values, and learn about people and meet people and spend some good time together. So traveling should be genuine, authentic, and serious work, and not just a weekend holiday or a weekend somewhere. People go, many people come from Europe to India on a holiday, and they just sit on the beach for a few days, or just go and see Taj Mahal or see some monumental buildings and then come back, and they think they have been to India. That is the kind of mass tourism which is in a way globalization and creating carbon emission and creating global warming and climate change. And therefore we have to change this mass tourism and a mass travel, and we have to be very very selective in our travels. So these are few examples of collaboration and a building. So creating alternatives in every field, we have to show. This is why, in a way, Schumacher College in England and Escola Schumacher in Brazil is a kind of example of collaboration and a building alternative. At the moment, many of our universities and schools are part of the problem. We have to create alternative schools and universities like Schumacher College and Escola Schumacher in Brazil, because these universities, like in England, we have famous universities like Oxford and Cambridge, and in America there are famous universities like Yale and Harvard and many other universities around the world. They are training young people to be part of this industrial, mass-producing, globalized, mechanized, materialistic consumer culture and society and economy. And so our present-day universities and the educational system is a part of the problem. And if we want to create a new, sustainable, resilient, regenerative society and a future which will be a new economy, local economy, sustainable economy, which will be sustained and which can be regenerative, not for 5 years or 10 years or 50 years or 500 years, for 5 million years. That is the kind of economy we want to build. And so nobody is teaching what kind of economy that will be. All the schools and universities are brainwashing our young people to go and join the rat race. Even if you win the rat race, you still remain the rat. Therefore, why to join the rat race? We need to create new kind of educational system where people not go and be part of this very polluting, wasteful, fossil fuel dependent industry and economy and a centralized politics, capitalist or even some socialist like Soviet Union or what was Soviet Union or Eastern Europe socialist. I want to say this, that environmental movement, holistic environmental movement is going beyond the dualism of capitalism and socialism. Because capitalism is putting capital on the top and say financial capital is the key to everything. And so all our business, all our economy, all our universities, all our education system, all has to be part of this financial capitalist system. And nature becomes only a resource for the economy. And human beings become the instruments of making profit for the economy and for big industry and for big multinational corporations. So capitalism puts financial capital at the top and nature and humans in the service of the economy, in the service of profit motive, in the service of big industry and commercial institutions and multinational corporations. That's a capitalism. So we go beyond. Environmental movement does not stand for a capitalist system. But also socialism has two levels. One kind of socialism we have seen, like what was in the Soviet Union or to some extent China, is a very kind of state capitalism. It's a very centralized, very bureaucratic and top-down, and also very industrial. It's anthropocentric. Capitalism and communism, socialism, both of them are anthropocentric. They put humans at the top, and they think that the nature is only a resource for the economy, and nature is there for the use and for the abuse even, but use of human beings. So human beings at the top and nature at the bottom. This is the kind of philosophy we have. And in capitalism, of course, even not human beings at the top, but capital and money and finance and a kind of money becomes at the top, profit becomes at the top, and human beings in the service of profit and nature as a resource for the economy. Socialism also has some problems. Historically, we have seen in the past that it has become centralized, bureaucratic, top-down state capitalism. And also it puts societies, human beings and social beings, social structures at the top, and nature still at the bottom. But we environmentalists embrace the deep ecology. The deep ecology is to see the intrinsic value of nature. Nature is not a resource for the economy. Nature is the source of life itself. It's a big difference. We shift our focus from nature being in the service of economy and a resource for the economy. We change that and we say nature is life itself. Nature is a source of life and life itself. And therefore, nature has intrinsic value. The value of nature is not to be measured only in terms of how useful it is to humans. Humans are one species among millions of other species. And of course, humans are very important. And we cherish and we celebrate humanity. But humans are not here to exploit and subjugate and oppress and destroy the natural world. This is why in Brazil, at the moment, because we put economy at the top, capitalist economy at the top, and money at the top, profit at the top, we are destroying the rainforest, clear-cutting the rainforest to grow soya. So the Chinese can take our soya, Brazilian soya, and give us money. And the American companies, corporations are investing in soya farms, in rainforest and so on, so that they can make profit. So nature is being used just for making profit. This is what the environmental movement around the world is challenging, that nature has intrinsic value. Nature is not there just for humans and useful to humans, and therefore nature has value. So this is the message of, very profound message of Schumacher College in England and Escola Schumacher in Brazil, that we must have deep ecology and embracing the intrinsic value of nature. So when we can do that, then we have a social and natural environment, resilient, protected, and safe. But that can happen only when we have to embrace spiritual values. Without spiritual values, which are values of changing our heart, changing our attitude to nature, changing our attitude to people, rather than dividing people into Brazilians and Chinese and Indians and Europeans and Africans and black and white and Jews and Christians and Muslims and Hindus, all this division, separation. Humans separate, nature separate. And even among humans, black separate, white separate, men separate, women separate, Hindus separate, Muslims separate, Christians separate, all these divisions. So how do we overcome with divisions? By embracing the unity of life and embracing the unity of humanity. And beyond unity of humanity, unity of life. And when we embrace the unity of life, that is the value of considering life as sacred. And when we have a sense of the sacred, all life, not only human life as well as other than human life, more than human life, all life is sacred. And when we have a sense of the sacred, then we have a respect and a reverence for life. Like Albert Schweitzer started a big movement called Reverence for Life. And so that's the kind of spirituality. So this change of consciousness and then learning to live moderately and modestly and with restraint and simplicity. I have written a book called Elegant Simplicity. So we live simply, we live elegantly, we live frugally, we live with restraint, and we don't look at nature that is all for us to grab and use human beings to exploit. So we have a kind of more ecological spirituality. At the moment, the industrial, mechanized, materialistic, consumerist society that we have today is a very egotistical society. Everybody is in competition through their ego. And we are all in this competition struggling for name, fame, power, money, prestige, position, me. This is the materialistic value. I would like the environmental movement to move forward with more ecological, from ego to eco. This is the shift we have to make. Ego is me, 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 very individualistic and separational. Whereas eco comes from Greek words, from which comes ecology and economy. Actually, economy is a very nice word from the original meaning. So eco means home. And in a home, we, family, together, parents, children, husband, wife, neighbors, friends, community, a village, a neighborhood, we, from me to we, from ego to eco. We have to change this from G to C, from ego to eco. When we have this kind of shift of consciousness, that is a kind of, I call, spiritual environment. And so without spirituality, without spiritual environment, without these values of generosity, cooperation, compassion, kindness, love for each other, reverence, respect, these are the values which inform our ecological, environmental, natural, and social movement. If we do not have these profound values of the spirit, then our biodiversity or ecological movement or the social justice movement is very superficial. It's just changing the institutions, changing the systems without changing the heart, changing the economic or political system without changing the consciousness. And without changing the consciousness, without changing our heart, without changing our values, without changing our worldview, if we change systems, they will not be very durable. They will not be very satisfactory. You can shift from one system to another system, but the meaning is given by these spiritual values. The matter and the meaning. Systems are bureaucracy, organization, arrangement, which is good, systemic thinking. We need to have systemic thinking. We need systems. But systems have to have also values. They have to be underpinned and have to have purpose. Without the purpose, without the meaning, without the spirit, if we have just a system change, that system will not last very long and will become corrupt again and will become self-serving again. And people will start to use it for superficial purpose, like name, fame, power, prestige, domination, me again, egotistical. So if we want to shift away from this egotistical economy and egotistical politics and egotistical industry and corporations, and we want to move to ecological lifestyle, ecological values, then we have to underpin our movement with spirituality. So I have spoken briefly about these three important dimensions of the global environmental movement. We stand up against the injustice by protesting. We give our life to protect the good and traditional cultures, values, and we create and collaborate and cooperate, work together to build alternatives. These are the three things the global environmental movement stands for. And I'm part of that. I am an activist. As you introduced me and said that I started my life as a Gandhian movement and a Gandhian person. And I walked with my master, Vinoba Bhave, around India, asking landlords to give land for the poor and creating a non-violent society. So I became an activist at the age of 18, and I walked around the world for peace. Peace within yourself, peace with people, and peace with nature. At the three levels of peace again. Three levels, not only peace I was against nuclear weapons, of course, and I was protesting against nuclear weapons. I was protesting against the arms race and war preparation. But at the same time, I was also saying that we have to make peace with nature. The way we are treating rainforest is like war against nature. The way we are treating animals in factory farm, that is war against animals. And the way we are polluting our oceans and our land is a war against oceans and land. So we have to make peace with nature. And at the same time, I also talked about spiritual peace, and that is peace within yourself. if your mind is not at peace, your heart is at not peace, you are not an embodiment of peace, how can you bring peace in the world? So you have to be the change that you want to see in the world. This is what my master Mahatma Gandhi said. Be the change that you want to see in the world. And that embodiment of change, the embodiment of that consciousness, we have to be, and we have to be, and by being, we become spiritual. So spirituality is nothing to do with religion. Spirituality has nothing to do with any dogmas or any kind of doctrines, like Hindu or Muslim or Christian or Buddhist or a Jew or some. Those religions are fine, but spirituality transcends the religious divisions. Spirituality is an overarching values, consciousness of unity of life, and unity of humanity, and unity of the earth. These are the values for which I created this journey. So I am an activist, and my actions are acts of love. I act because I love planet Earth, I love people, I love humanity, I love the future generations, I love indigenous people, I love their cultures, I love the rainforest of Brazil and the Amazon of Brazil and the great river of Brazil. When I was there in the Amazon and the great river of the Amazon, great river, wonderful, what a great gift, what a great blessing from the universe that Brazil has. Brazil is sitting on the real wealth. The rainforests are your real wealth. Your wealth in coming from soya beans selling to China, dollars and whatever money, that is not the real wealth. The real wealth is your land and your forests and your oceans and your people and your communities and their skill and their imagination and their creativity and their humanity and their compassion. This is the real wealth. So I would say to Brazilian people that protect your real wealth, protect your rainforest, protect your indigenous people's culture, protect your communities. And when you protect and build alternatives and build new communities which can be sustainable and resilient for the future. This is my message to Brazil. And I'm excited to speak to you today. And I was hoping to come to Brazil and speak to you face to face in person, but not done. So at least on this online, I'm able to say to you, and hope you will remember these 3 words and think about this and contemplate on this and make your own understanding, make your own meaning of how to protest against what is wrong and how to protect what is good and how to build good, alternative, sustainable, new projects and new culture. These are the 3 words. And collaborate together, cooperate and work together. No ego, but just eco. This is what my message to you all is. Thank you very much for joining today. And thank you very much for listening to me. And it is my great honor and pleasure to be part of, I love Brazil and I love the people of Brazil and I love the Amazon and the rainforest and I love the indigenous cultures and indigenous people. This is my love, and out of this love that I want to say to Brazilian people that take care of your wealth, take care of your culture, and you are a great country, you are a great people, and I am proud to be your friend. Thank you very much.
Ooh, Satish, what amazing share.
Thank you.
Thanks for your talk. Thanks for your inspiration. Thanks for the fire in the eyes. Yeah, it's so amazing. Yeah, we can still perceive it through the online camera. Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you very much. Well, we're gonna open the question and answer sessions now. We're gonna have some questions from the audience and some questions from people that we have invited to Satish.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me ask Beatriz. Beatriz, are we all set for the
Yes.
the video of the? Okay.
I'll put the first one.
Okay. We're going to play the first video. It's from Caetano. He's founder of the NGO Saúde e Alegria. They do an amazing job in the Amazon basin with the indigenous people, the people that live in the banks of the rivers too, the small rivers. It's amazing work, contribution he's doing to all of us. Let's listen to his question.
Just so everyone knows, the video is in Portuguese. So Fernanda that doesn't have to translate, and we are going to translate to Satish.
Bom dia a todos e todas, bom dia Satish, aqui quem fala é Caetano Scanavino, da ONG Projeto Saúde e Alegria, diretamente do fronte do Tapajós, Amazônia, e a pergunta é, será que dá tempo? Eu digo isso porque tem uma crise climática tremenda, uma emergência aí para ontem, para resolver as coisas para ontem, e agora, por exemplo, aqui na Amazônia, em plena pandemia, com o Brasil parado, o desmatamento está batendo recordes em cima de recordes, tem novos garimpos surgindo, o que a gente vê é que o grileiro não está fazendo home office. Então, como é que a gente monta uma estratégia de resistência, de contraproposta, de caminhos para um mundo melhor, com a agilidade que atenda à pressa e à emergência que o planeta clama para evitar crises climáticas ainda piores do que a que já está acontecendo?
Thank you very much, Caetano. I'm going to translate the question to Satish. Satish Caetano said, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Satish. Here's Caetano Scanavio from NGO Projeto Saúde e Alegria, straight from Tapajós River in the Amazon. And my question is, will there be enough time? I ask this because there are tremendous climate crisis, an emergency for yesterday. And now, for example, here in the Amazon, in the midst of the pandemic, with the whole country put on pause, deforestation is reaching records on top of records. There are new land grabbers appearing. We notice that illegal mining are not doing home office. So how do we organize a strategy of resistance, of counter-proposal, of ways for a better world with an agility that addresses the emergency in the speed hurry that the world claims to avoid climate crisis even worse than this one?
Very good question. Thank you for your question. Very good question. Of course, we are going through a very difficult and very critical time. And particularly in Brazil, there are lots of big challenges and big questions. But do we have time or not is not in our hand. Time is now. Just remember this one line. Time is now, and time is now to act. We cannot control time in our hands. We can control our action. So without worrying whether we have time or not have time, act now. And as many people as possible, if more and more people come together, collaborate, and this is why I say collaborate, and protect and protest, time is now. And if we act, more than people act, we will be able to succeed. So I would say, don't worry about time, because it's not in your hands. We can spend all our time, if we have time or not time. How do we know who can give us time? Our action is in our hand. We can stand up today and we can give our lives in the service of our forest. We can give our lives today, now. So time is now. I will act. I will do my best. That's all I can do. I cannot control everybody. I cannot control government. I cannot control everybody. But if everybody acts together, then governments will change, economy will change, things will happen. So things can happen. I mean, you can see many, many things have happened. The Soviet Union came to an end, and the British Empire came to an end, and the Portuguese Empire came to an end. And many, many big changes have taken place in the history. So change will happen, and the universe will bring the change. Your action is in your hands. Act now, act today. Do your best. Leave the results in the hands of the universe. Leave the results, what you accomplish, we cannot control it. It is in the hands of the universe. But action is in your hand. Act today, act now. Time is now.
Thank you very much, Satish. Now we have a question from an attendee. Her name is Marina Tavares, and her question is, Satish, I'm reading your book, Soil Society, and there you talk about how politics without poetry is incomplete. So in your opinion, what be the poetry of our political times right now?
Yes, very good question. Thank you for reading my book. And by the way, the new book, my next book called Elegant Simplicity, is also coming out in Portuguese in August. So once you have finished reading my book, Soil, Soul, Society, I hope you can also look at my new book, Elegant Simplicity. But your good question about poetry and politics. At the moment, politics has become very kind of superficial and mechanized. Poetry comes from the heart. Poetry comes from the imagination. At the moment, our politics is lacking in the imagination. And when there's no imagination, it becomes superficial. It becomes mechanistic. It becomes just a kind of drudgery. And so we need to imagine. And in imagination, we have to participate. Participatory democracy, participatory economy. We have to participate with everybody. And so when you are poetry, word poet, poesis, comes from the meaning making. So when you are a maker and not just a kind of instrument, you are not just a consumer, you are not just a kind of, following the rules, so to speak, which most of the economy and politics at the moment are all straitjacket. There's no imagination and there's no making. So when you become imaginative, creative, and you make with your generosity and with your heart and with your spirit and with your love, great poetry is an expression of love. If you are in politics with love in your heart, your politics will be transformed and your politics will become poetry. Take Mahatma Gandhi. He was a political man, but he turned his politics into poetry. Take Nelson Mandela. When he came out of jail after 27 years, the way he ruled his country, New South Africa, and the way his generosity of heart and his love for people, no revenge, no violence. He did not say that all the white people who exploited us now will be put in jail or put on trial or be charged. Nothing. Generosity of heart. And he was a poet in politics. So there are examples of that kind we can have. And so bring imagination, bring love, bring heart into your politics, and your politics will be transformed into poetry.
Thank you very much, Satish. Now we're going to another question. This one is from a guest. Her name is Bel Coelho. She's a very popular chef here in Brazil. She runs a very beautiful restaurant here in Vila Madalena. It's called Clandestino. She cooks amazing food, and she's a great activist too for the right agriculture, for the right cultivating of food organically, and justice for all the people living in the field too. So I'm going to play her question, and then I'm going to translate it to you, Satish.
Okay.
Olá, eu sou Bel Coelho, sou chefe de cozinha do restaurante Clandestino em São Paulo e sou também uma ativista pelas causas socioambientais no Brasil. E a minha pergunta para o Satish é sobre sistema agrícola. O agronegócio no Brasil ele é responsável por 23% do PIB e também responsável por um desmatamento absolutamente desenfreado e irracional da terra, que consome litros e litros de agrotóxicos. Talvez nós sejamos um dos países que mais consome agrotóxico no mundo. E eu queria saber como se dá essa transição de um sistema como esse para um sistema agrícola mais democrático, né, que democratiza a terra, mais sustentável e ecológico, alimentando a todos.
So cute. Thank you very much, Bel Coelho. I'm going to translate the question to Satish. Hello, I'm Bel Coelho, chef at restaurant Clandestino in São Paulo, and also activist related to social environmental causes in Brazil. And my question to Satish is about agricultural systems. Agribusiness in Brazil is responsible for 23% of GDP and also responsible for extreme deforestation and the rationale of the earth. which consumes liters and liters of pesticides. We probably might be one of the countries which most consume pesticides in the world. And should like to know how this transition takes place from a system like ours to an agricultural system which is more democratic, which democratize our land, more sustainable and ecological, feeding us all.
Very good question. First of all, I would like to thank you for your question. I love food. I love cooking. I have 2 acres of garden at my own home. And at Schumacher College, we have a great garden, about nearly 10 acres of garden. And we are growing lots of our food organically with agroecology, with permaculture, with everything. And every year at Schumacher College, we give training to students who come to learn about how to grow food. And so my mother was also a farmer. She grew food, sesame and melons and many, many vegetables and fruit and wonderful. So I hope that next time when I come to Brazil, I will be able to come and see your restaurant and maybe enjoy your good cooking. So thank you for this question. What we need to do is to create new schools and universities of teaching food and farming methods with agroecology, where trees and food crops grow side by side. Permaculture, where whole system of growing is connected with energy and lifestyle. So we need to teach young people. It's a big transition. It's not going to happen overnight, but we have to start somewhere. Great change starts with small action. A big oak tree comes out of a small acorn. So in the same way, with small action, like Schumacher College, a small action, Escola Schumacher in Brazil is a small action. In the same way, with a small action, we can make big change. And so I would say that in Brazil, we need to start 1, 2, 3, however many you can start. And many of you are listening to me today. If you are able to do something together, collaborate and start schools and college where you can teach young people agroecology, permaculture, organic gardening, organic farming. 60 to 70% of food in the world today is still grown by small-scale farmers, not big agro-industry or big agro-business. But small-scale farms are still producing majority of food in Africa, in India, in many other South American countries. Brazilian big, I don't know what is the percentage of small farmers in Brazil, but protect the small farmers and create new farmers. Young people are longing to do something on the land, but they don't know. Their education doesn't teach them. Their education only teaching them to go in Sao Paulo, go in Rio de Janeiro, go in big cities, or go to New York and work in an office, work in a high-rise buildings, work in a shop, work in government, office jobs. That is the training of all our educational system. Universities and schools are taking away our young people from agriculture, taking away our young people from the land and putting them into cities and putting them into offices and putting them into industrial setup and systems. We need to teach and create young generation of growers. That is the challenge we have to take. And that is how we will make the transition. And at the same time, we have to create awareness among Brazilian people that this kind of industrial farming and agro business is not going to sustain the life of Brazil for many centuries to come. So it's a long-term vision we have to create. And in order to create that, we have to start teaching young people how to grow food and enjoy food. And we also need to pay better price for the farmers, small farmers. At the moment, if you are working in a bank, you get lots of money. Maybe you get $1,000 or $2,000 a day. If you are working on a farm, on a land worker, land laborer, you get maybe $50 or $100 a day. Why? Why working on the land should not be more cherished, more respected, better paid, so that they can have good livelihood, So we have to create a new culture of respect for the small farmers and cherish the small farmers and cherish the growing of food. Growing of food should be respected and not seen as somebody if you are not educated, you are not clever, you are not very intelligent, you can't work in the cities, therefore you are backward, and so you go and work on the land. This kind of attitude has to change, and we have to learn that working on the land is a very respectable work. I garden and I enjoy it. It's a very healing. Gardening and farming and working on the land is very therapeutic, and also we need food. And if we get fresh, organic food from your garden or nearby, and not this packaged food in the plastic coming from long, long distance away, that is a good, healthy food we need. At the moment, many people are ill and unwell, mentally, physically, because they are not getting good food. And so food is fundamental. And we need to teach, we need to create, so not only your restaurant, but you also need to create a school where you can teach. In England, we have a wonderful chef called Hugh Fernley Whittingstall, and he has created a school for cooking and for growing food, teaching how to grow food and teaching how to cook food. This education we need to bring back into our schools and universities and create new schools and new universities. Then we can change the education, the agricultural system.
Thank you very much, Satish. You mentioned that we should get together and found new schools, right? Sometimes for most of us, it's very, we don't feel like we have the skills or the abilities to do. So I'd like if you could share with us what happened to you when after you walked the whole world protesting against the nuclear weapons, you settled down in England with your lovely wife, June, and then you didn't see schools that really mattered to you. So you decided to found your own schools for your own kids. Can you share with us this experience you had so that we can feel also empowered that we ourselves could open and found new schools too?
Yeah, exactly. So this is a kind of creating alternatives, building alternatives with collaboration. When my children were young, they were coming to 10, 11-year-old, I had to send them to a normal school. Normal schools look at the child and they think the child has no body. They have only head. And their education is only about reading, writing, arithmetic, geography, history, all intellectual. They don't teach anything else. But my child has a whole body. How to educate my child with a whole body? Head, heart, and hands. Education of head is good, necessary. But without the education of heart, without developing the heart values, and which creates poetry. Poetry comes from the heart. And so education of heart is also important. And education of hands. I want to teach our children to grow food, to build a house, to mend, to do carpentry, to make pottery, to make things with your hands. That's very creative and very satisfactory. And so I said, let's create a new school. So I called a meeting of my village. And about 30 people came. And out of those 30 people, 8 parents said that if you start a new school, which will be education of head, heart, and hands, we will send our children to your school. So I had 9 children on the very first day, prepared and ready to come to this new school. And so I started the small school. I said, we'll call it the small school because only a small school can have a community. And we started the school with a garden. And we said, all children will learn to do gardening. And we started school with a good kitchen. And we had a teaching master who was teaching cooking. And we said, cooking master will teach the cooking and a gardening master will teach the gardening. And so hands very important. And so every day, fresh food was cooked. And from the garden, vegetables, children looking at the tomatoes growing from one tiny seed of a tomato becoming a plant, and the plant giving flowers, and flower becoming a tomato, green tomato, and green becoming yellow, and yellow becoming red, and juicy, and sweet, and delicious. A miracle of nature. So children loved it. So it was a very, very successful experiment. And so I think every school should have a garden. Every school should have a kitchen. Every school should have a cooking teacher, cooking master. Every school should have a gardening teacher. Then our children will not have fear that, oh, I can't grow food. I can't do cooking. I can't do it. I can't do it. Children should not have such a fear. Children should be fearless. Yes, I can grow food. I can cook food. I can eat well myself. And I can cook food for you and for each other. And I can grow food for myself and for each other. This kind of fearless culture we have to create in our schools. And that was my experience of the small school in my village where my children went. And this is the same example I have created at the Schumacher College, where all our students come. Every day they go in the garden and they produce food. And we have wonderful crops of onions and garlic and tomatoes and potatoes and courgettes and aubergine and peppers. It's a wonderful, what a great blessing to have fresh food from your garden. 10 minutes before you are preparing your lunch, you go in the garden and you bring what is fresh vegetable growing and bring it in the kitchen and wash it and prepare it and cook it and eat it. What a great celebration. Who wants all this superficial entertainment of Facebook and Twitters and social media and cinemas and so on, when you can just go in the garden? Such real joy of life. So I would say every school must have a cooking teacher. Every school must have a gardening teacher. That will be the great revolution. And don't worry about government. Start yourself, and children will come to you.
I love when you bring the idea of a miracle happening all the time. I brought this onion here. I mean, it was not in the garden. It was in the fridge. But you see, that's a miracle too. That's life coming.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah,
what a great, wonderful picture. Thank you very much.
You open the fridge and it's there. I mean, it's alive. It wants to continue living. So it's amazing. So still in the field of education, we have another question here. It's by Lotus Karandi. This is, how can we educators, since we see many answers already exist inside the educated, inside the kids, how can we create more spaces of openness for this knowledge to be spread among us, the adults that have the power to decide?
The people who have power, you have to communicate with them. And we have to find a way of creative and positive communication. When you can make the case, a good case for politicians and people in power to see that we need, for example, schools. We need in every school a cooking teacher and a gardening teacher. We have to make that case. The power of communication is very important. At the moment, we don't quite know and we don't quite have a skill to communicate. And in communication, it is not that you are wrong, I'm right. You don't have idea, I have the idea. That's the ego. That's the kind of preaching. Communication is not preaching. Communication is dialogue. And in dialogue, you listen as much as you speak. Or perhaps even listen more than you speak. Because we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen twice and speak 1 time. So this is the skill of communication. So we need to learn to communicate with people with power and convince them that it is in their interest to be holistic, to be creative, to be more human and more ecological, more social, more spiritual. These values are universal. And even people in politics and in power and in corporations, they should be able to understand it. But we have lost the way of communication. And the media, which communicates with people, they are very successful in communicating. Advertising is a kind of communication. And telling people that people are greedy. And therefore you have to be more kind of consumer. And people are selfish. And therefore you have to give them more selfish way of fulfilling themselves. These are the ways of the industrialists, the consumerists, the multinational corporations, the advertising. All those are communicating to these politicians and people with power and brainwashing them. So we, the alternative movement, has to become very clever in communicating our ideas. So communicate, communicate, communicate. Strong, skillfully, diplomatically, and also stand protestingly as well when the time comes. Like Mahatma Gandhi communicated with the British to get the independence of India. And even Martin Luther King communicated with JFK and the white people. And so developing the skillful communication is very important to change the minds and hearts of politicians and powerful people.
Thank you very much, Satish. Well, I'll lead to the next question. But what you just said, I mean, it reminded me of, I mean, sometimes people listen to the speech or listen to a talk by yourself, by Satish Kumar, and thinks, oh, he's saying this, but this is too easy to say when he's doing diplomatic or this kind of speech. I'd like to, if you could share with us, at least I remember 2 opportunities that you suffered because of the color of your skin. And I'd like to know how you reacted to these people that were putting your life in danger. Once it was in France because you were mistaken by an Algerian terrorist. And then you had a Frenchman pointing a gun at you. And the other time was when you met Martin Luther King in the United States. And afterwards you went for dinner, but the restaurant didn't want to serve you because of the color of your skin. How did you react? How did you find the real way, the path to communicate with these people that were threatening your life?
Yes, particularly, there are 2 good examples, but particularly in the United States, after meeting Martin Luther King, when I went to a restaurant and I was refused. First of all, I did not, even though the gun was being pointed at me, I was not afraid. I was not afraid of losing life. So that's the first reaction, no fear. The secondly, I was feeling that this person has a kind of ignorance. He is a victim of his own brainwashing. He has been brought up in this culture where he has been taught that being white is superior, being black is bad. And if you are black, you have no status. You have no place in society. You should not mix with white people. This is the kind of conditioning of the mind. It's not just his fault, although because he is a victim of his own conditioning of the mind. And therefore, I have to be kind, generous, forgiving, and not afraid. I'm prepared to die, but show him that, look, I'm as human being as you are. There's no difference between you and me. And under my skin, I have a red blood. Under your skin, you have a red blood. We are same. You are made of earth, air, fire, water. I am made of earth, air, fire, water. We have consciousness. We have a heart. We have imagination. We are same, but it's a nature's gift. Evolution has created this diversity. That some people are black, some people are white, some people are brown, some people are yellow, some people are black, women, some people are men. All this is a wonderful diversity. So let us celebrate diversity and not turn this diversity into division, and not turn diversity into something bad. Diversity is to be cherished, whether it's a biodiversity, cultural diversity, racial diversity, linguistic diversity, religious diversity, any kind of diversity is to be cherished and celebrated rather than turned into division and fight and quarrel and discrimination. This was my reaction. And this is what I was speaking to him. And I was speaking to other people in the United States. And the change has happened. between the time when Martin Luther King was fighting and now, change has happened, but not enough. Even now, the black people are treated very badly, and people are treated and discriminated and exploited and not given the kind of respect which every human being should have. So dignity of human life has to be established, and it's a long journey. We cannot say that it can be achieved tomorrow, but it's a lifelong journey. Activism is a journey and not a destination. Activism is a process of life. It's a continuous process. It's not a product. It's not that one day we have reached utopia and there are no more human problems. Being part of human problems and part of solution all the time. So we have to make that journey and continue to act. This is why one of the questions that, is there enough time? Time is now, and we should continue to act and improve more and more and celebrate the diversity rather than turn diversity into division. That was my reaction.
Thank you very much, Satish. We have one question here from the audience. It's from...
Maybe the last question, because...
Yeah, it's going to be the last question. I'm going to put two together because they are about the same thing. One is from the attendee that is here at Zoom, and the other one is from a guest. She's a doctor. She works at the intensive care unit of 2 public hospitals here in Brazil, and she's working in the front battling the COVID-19. It's a very, very tough job. I mean, some days she has to, she goes to the job and she knows that she's kind of giving like 10 to 15 obit news. I mean, she has to go to the family and tell the people that they have lost their relative to COVID-19. It's a very, very, very hard work. And because of so much misinformation, some people even get very aggressive towards her because don't believe that she's doing the right thing. And sometimes people believe that COVID-19 is an invention, this kind of stuff. So one of André, which is attending here, he would like to talk about all this situation we're living now with over 8,000 deaths per day here in Brazil because of COVID-19. And I'm going to play the question from the doctor so that you can understand the situation we're living now.
Okay.
Bom dia, Satish. Bom dia a todos. Aqui é a Natália Guapiaçu, médica plantonista de 2 UTIs Covid na capital de São Paulo. E a minha pergunta é, para você, qual o conhecimento mais importante que a gente deve se lembrar ao passar pelos momentos mais difíceis? E como acreditar em dias melhores e transformar esses períodos mais difíceis, essa insegurança e medo do desconhecido, em um período de transformações e evolução para a humanidade? Obrigada.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Natalia sent us this question very early in the morning today after a 36-hour shift at the public hospital. So she said, "Hi, Satish, I am Natalia Guapiaçu, doctor at 2 COVID-19 emergency response centers in São Paulo. And my question is, in your view, which is the most important knowledge to keep close to heart while going through the most difficult times? And also, how to believe in better days, how to transform these hard moments and this insecurity, fear of the unknown to help improve mankind?"
Yes, this is a very heartfelt. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for offering your service, offering your life selflessly, compassionately in the service of humanity and the service of those who are suffering. So your generosity and your sense of service to suffering people from the COVID-19 is something I admire and I respect, and I feel very grateful that people like you around the world are giving their lives in the service of humanity and to save other people. And my heart goes out for you and people like you, doctors, nurses, and workers around the world. And so humanity sometimes goes through great crisis. And this crisis, in nature, everything changes, everything passes. This too will pass. It may take 6 months, it may take a year, we don't know, but this too will pass. And during this time, many people have to make sacrifice to help others. And you are making that sacrifice. This is why my heart goes after your work. And so I would like to say that nature is such that nothing will stand still. Everything changes. And we all pass. So like humans pass, also diseases pass. And the epidemics pass. So this will pass, but we have to see this as a voice of the earth. It's a kind of cry from the earth, and say how we have treated nature, how we have treated wildlife, how we have treated land and animals, and the globalization, all these causes. So maybe after this COVID crisis has passed, we need to think about how we live a new life, so that we don't repeat these mistakes and live in harmony with the natural world. We live in harmony with the wildlife. We live in humility. Humans have to be humble. And without humility, there is no humanity. So we live humbly and live in harmony with natural world. And that way, we create something which will perhaps avoid similar crisis coming again. So that is only, we have to live in hope. Without hope, there is no life. And so your work is very important. Your sacrifice is very important. What you are doing, you are giving your life in the service of the others. You are doing great sacrifice, for which I congratulate you. And people like you, I admire you. And we are grateful to you for your great work. But at the same time, humanity has to learn that after COVID crisis, we need to create a new way of life, so we are more in harmony with the natural system and natural world. At the moment, we are treating natural systems and natural world as if we can control nature, we can win nature, we can have a kind of war against nature, and we have to conquer nature. Humanity cannot conquer nature. If we fight against nature, we will be the losers. In the end, we will be the losers. So this arrogance that people can conquer nature has to go. And when it goes and we become humble and we learn to live in harmony with the wild nature and the natural world, then I think we can create a new way of life which is more healthy and more sustainable. So with that humility, we have to move forward. And yet, I congratulate you for your selfless service.
Thank you very much, Satish. Thank you. We're running out of time. First of all, I'd like to thank Satish for the opportunity of receiving this call. I'm going to pass the word also to Bia from the Escola Schumacher Brasil for her special thanks. Bia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Satish. I would like to thank a few people that were very engaged in making this happen. So, and people that are hiding on the backstage here, I think I would love if you could turn your videos on. Rosanne, it has been really beautiful. Someone wrote, and I was just noticing how beautiful it was to see Satish and you interpreting what he was saying. Thank you very much for that. Fernanda, who continues to speak as I speak about her, who's doing the translation. Thank you, Fe. Thank you, Flavia, for also helping with all of the questions and everything that came before we are here. And Luis, who is focusing on answering the messages that arrive on the chat. Elena, who was a miracle last week. Elena from TEDx that lent us this webinar room. And I think without her, we wouldn't be able to have this session. Thank you very much, Elena. Also regarding the book launch, Satish, you mentioned already that your book is being translated. And it was translated with the help of Escola, with the help of Marcelo Cardoso from Chile, an organization that supported us to be able to afford the translation, and Palas Athena, which is doing all of the work on editing the book and launching it in August. And also, I think every time we put something out, I feel so strongly the power of this network of the people, like the people engaged in this movement in Brazil. And I felt it when we started to spread the word that you were here, and I felt the resonance of people sharing the word and saying to other people, inviting other people. So in the end, we were here now over 550 people watching, and a lot of people that signed up, people that couldn't be here now that will watch later. So I think this message will also continue to be spread. I guess that's it. It's a great honor, I think, to be able to hold this space. In a way, it gives me a taste of what we were planning to have with you. Unfortunately, we cannot hug you now, Satish, but you can feel the hugs towards you. And I hope that you can be with us soon in Brazil. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a beautiful day.
Yeah, I believe we're going to have this video uploaded to YouTube, right? To the channel of the Escola Schumacher Brasil, is it right?
Yes, we're going to make it available as soon as we can on YouTube. And Satish, would you like also to
address final words?
Final words?
Yes, I would also like to express my thanks to you, Bia, yourself as well. You have thanked all the other people, but you also need thanks, because without you, this would not have happened either. And so it was you who connected with me and persuaded me and helped to get the technology going. So thank you very much again and again for your help and your devotion and your commitment. And also thank you for running Escola Schumacher in Brazil and giving your life and time to make Escola Schumacher a success. So I would like to also urge people who are listening to me, 500, 600 people who are in the audience, if you have any opportunity to support financially Escola Schumacher, please support, because we need to make Escola Schumacher a great success in Brazil. So it can bring new education, new ideas, new worldview, new consciousness in Brazil, and protect the environment, protect rainforests, protect indigenous cultures, and promote new alternatives. So the work of Escola Schumacher is very, very important, and I cherish it, I admire it, and therefore I would like people of Brazil to support it intellectually and financially and time. Whatever you can give, please give, but particularly financial help is very important. So if you can make a donation, please make, and make Escola Schumacher a great success. And also I would like to say, it's a bit selfish, but I would like to say that if you can have a copy of my new book, Elegant Simplicity, I'll be delighted. That will be a way of me being in your room and in your home through my book. My ideas will come to you. So please look out for my new book, Elegant Simplicity. So support Escola Schumacher, buy my book, and we hope to see you again next time when COVID crisis is over. And I hope to come to Brazil and see you face to face and visit the Amazon and see your beautiful country and see your beautiful smiling faces again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Satish. Thank you. Everybody. Bom, obrigado a todos que estão nos assistindo aqui. Muito obrigado pela presença de vocês. Sem vocês também não seria possível fazer isso. Não teríamos esse encontro, essa energia, esse amor todo. Muito obrigado pela luz. Vamos que vamos. E logo, logo, tudo isso vai estar no YouTube.
Obrigada, Cazé. Obrigada, gente.
Obrigado, pessoal.
Grande beijo.
Grande beijo.
Valeu, obrigada.
Bye, bye, Satish. Bye, bye.
Bye, bye.